There's no doubt that I'm the biggest fan of transplanting and growing a garden using starter plants. Really, the advantages are too many to list with almost no downsides. Provided that you avoid these common planting mistakes that even veteran growers make sometimes. There's 8 on the list, so let's get to it. Growing your garden from transplants really is the way to go, saving you time, space, and often money. And while the time you save is often substantial, planting at the wrong time can have disastrous results. Every crop that you grow will have a defined window of time for planting. Some more than others, and some crops will even have multiple windows of planting in a single year. Plant at the wrong time, and that cold crop could be maturing in the heat of summer. Plant too late, and that crop might be trying to fruit at the end of the season when it's just not warm enough. The second transplanting mistake is really common, and that's incorrect planting depth. Unlike tomatoes, peppers, and most nightshades, which can tolerate a wide range of planting depths, most plants have a defined root color. Now, the root color is the part of the plant stem that meets the soil. For most of our crops, this root color is defined and should not be buried. Too deep, and the plants could rot. Too shallow, and the root color sits up too high, and the plant could flop over due to lack of support. Crops such as strawberries are very sensitive to this. So when you're planting things like these guys, always be aware of how deep you're planting. Another thing to watch out for is the time of day that you plant. Try to avoid transplanting during the heat of the day. Planting right around dinner time gives that plant the whole night to adjust to the new surroundings and temperatures. And speaking of the time of day, the type of day also matters. Try your best not to plant on super hot or sunny days, or in really windy conditions. You might not think about it, but the wind can have disastrous effects on lush plants such as this lettuce here. Overcast or slightly cloudy days are perfect. Minimize the shock to the plant and eliminate any possibilities of them drying out. Transplanting young crops when the conditions are favorable is easily more than half the battle. Solve that right there and you'll be successful more often than not. Right in line with the conditions to minimize shock is hardening your plants off. It's the same concept. Bridge the gap between the much harsher conditions of the outdoors compared to the easy, cushy life the young plants have had inside. If your young plants were raised outside, or you simply bought your starters pre-hardened off at the store, don't worry so much about this step. But if you need to bring plants out, even from somewhere like an unheated greenhouse, do so gradually, a couple hours at a time. Again, try not to do this on super hot days. Definitely start out in the shade or partial sun and watch the wind. It can be just as harsh. Okay, the conditions are right, the plants are ready for the great outdoors, and you've got your space all picked out. And therein lies the most common planting mistake made by new gardeners and even veteran gardeners, and that's plant spacing. When you first plant out a bed or garden plot, it looks like an astonishingly huge waste of space. Small plants a foot or more apart, with more exposed dirt than there is actual plants. But the spacing rules for each type and each variety of plant are there for a reason. Our crops grow fast, both above the ground and below. Resist that urge to plant too close together and give these guys the space they need to grow into the crops they can be. Next, once the plants are in place and you're happy with the spacing, you have to mulch. Mulching really helps to establish the right conditions for young plants. It does this by moderating temperature extremes, eliminating excessive moisture loss, and covering exposed soil. It makes a huge difference early on, not only for your transplanting success, but also as the crops grow and start to produce for you. Mulch with straw, grass clippings, shredded leaves, or even combinations of each one. Don't skip this step make it become part of your planting routine. And lastly, we have watering. Even if you followed all the steps up to this point and planted on the right day, in the right conditions, with the right depth, and really hardened off your transplants, not watering immediately can have disastrous effects, especially if you're planting in dry soil, undoing all that hard work that you've done up to this point. Water thoroughly right after you mulch, and then again soon after, within a couple of days. Make sure that those sensitive new roots have access to all the water they need to both expand their network as well as supporting the plant above. And if your soil is really dry, go ahead and pre-soak it before planting. And you know what? If you're at all concerned, it's never a bad idea to soak those pots from below before planting, for about a day or so, to really take this problem out of the equation. What's that old saying? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of veggies? All right, guys, good stuff. Instead of being lazy here and doing the normal recap, let's go ahead and replant this bed here, observing and avoiding all 8 of those planting mistakes that we touched on today. These type of overgrown bed plantings are my favorite, where the situation is dire and looks beyond repair. That way you get the most impact for what is really pretty minimal work. The first thing I'm gonna do is clear the bed of any weeds and any old plants so that we have a clean slate to start with. All right, before we can begin, let's put up all 8 planting mistakes so that we can cross them off as we go along. Today, we're gonna be planting a Roma tomato starter plant. While it could have gone in a few weeks ago, we're well within the window of planting tomatoes. So, the first problem is avoided. Additionally, we're planting late in the day, about 2 hours before sunset, so we're all good with number 3. And while earlier it was a sunny day today, overcast skies are creeping in and the temperatures are actually quite cool. So, let's check off number 4. And lastly, before we actually begin, as one of my own starter plants, of course this guy has already been hardened off. As it should be before we've even started planting, half the list has already been checked off. Tomatoes like to be planted deep, so I've dug a hole about 9 inches down. The soil is quite dry, so I'm definitely going to give it a good soaking first. Couple scoops of new fresh potting mix is always advisable, and we're ready to plant. The Roma starter fits like a glove, and with a little extra fresh potting mix, I'm really liking this depth. So let's check that one off. I do admit this one is a little bit too easy though, because in terms of planting, tomatoes are literally the easiest plants to do. So maybe not the best demonstration choice, but still, you guys get the idea. Once we're all planted up, time for some mulch. I'm going with straw in this case simply because it's what I have available. Lay it on nice and thick and check that guy off the list. Finally, let's give the plant a good soaking, not just now, but again tomorrow. And with that, we can check the final planting mistake off of our list and we're done. Starting a garden from transplants is always going to be my preferred method of growing. But even I know things can go wrong and it's not infallible. Eliminate these 8 mistakes, however, and the likelihood that your garden is going to be a thriving producing machine is quite high. Hey, if you have any more gardening tips that you'd love to share with the community, make sure to leave a comment down below. Also, if any of you are on Facebook, head on over and join our gardening group called Growing Better. The group has grown phenomenally fast, yet it will never lose its sense of community or its welcoming feel. If you're passionate about growing epic organic fruits, herbs, and veggies for you and your family, the Growing Better group is a great place to hang out, share, learn, and grow. Hey, thanks for watching, guys. If you're getting value in this and the other series that I'm doing on YouTube, hit those like, share, and subscribe buttons if you'd be so kind, and I'll see you in the next video.